going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. In today's video what I want to do is go through a few vehicle modification laws, dispel a few myths and hopefully help some of you guys in the UK around what you should be doing to your car, or maybe help your friends recognise that something on the car's not right. So if this does help you, or if it will help somebody else that you know, then please consider sharing the video. I'm going to be covering this video tints, registration plates, LED lights, suspension geometry and setups, and of course exhausts and decats. Now, in covering all these things, I want you to be aware that this is not legal advice. It's not something that I would recommend you, bring up and dispute in court should you be in that situation. But it's certainly something that is readily available on the internet, at least in most cases, because some instances, and we'll get into those things, are very grey areas, very sort of muddy water. There's not real legislation around them to give you any kind of any sort of legs to stand on, shall we say, if it did come into a legal dispute. Anyway, the first thing then, number one, that I want to go into, because it is very black and white, are tints. Tints, now, how tints are measured is how much light they let transfer through from one side to the other. It's as simple as that. The windscreen has to allow 75% of the light put to it travel through it. The side windows are a little bit more different, a little bit different in that they have to allow 70% of light to transfer through them. Those are the only laws really around tints specifically. The rear windows, you can black them out. You can put panels in them if you want. Perspex, plastic, solid, steel if you want. There are a lot of car drive vans, for example, Corsa and Fiesta, two very good examples where they literally do have steel sheets. So that is one of the possibilities. You can completely black out the rear windows and make the car a lot darker, give you a lot of privacy, but you wouldn't be breaking any laws if you just left the front windows completely alone. You can get window tint testers yourself. They're about £100–120 now, we're looking online, and those testers, although expensive, they will save you a lot of hassle in the future if you were wanting to tint the windows yourself. Alternatively, getting your windows tinted by a firm, by an approved company that probably already has one of those testers or knows all the level of tint, all the level of tints that they can use on your specific vehicle that might already have some sort of tint from factory. They'll know what combination to use, probably off the top of the head if it's a common vehicle of the tint, to be able to make sure that you're legal, legit, and don't have any worries when you're driving on the road. So maybe spend an extra 10, 20, 50 quid and get it done properly by someone who knows the stuff, and gives you one less thing to worry about. Number two then, the second thing I want to get into is registration plates. Registration plates have to be easily visible, they have to be at the very front of the car, and they have to have certain reflective properties. These plates are normally identified by the BSAU mark on the plates. That will basically specify that that is a British standard registration plate. It has the right reflective properties. It's not tinted, so no, you can't tint your plates, that's illegal. And the letters are the correct font, have the correct space in between them, all that sort of thing. But spacing can be altered even on a BSAU plate. You can specify it to the plate printer, if you like, to space the letters in a particular way, but it's not always legal. You need to space them in the correct standard fashion that you would see any other plate. And that's so that they're easily read. You can't put them in the windscreen, you can't put them behind the front grille of your car, you have to be at the very front of the car, and they can't be curved either around the side of the bumper, although you can have them offset as long as they are square enough to the front of the vehicle where they can be made easily visible. So that's reg plates in a nutshell, very to the point, no grey areas. Exhausts on the other hand, so this is number three, going into exhaust now, and specifically exhaust noise. Exhaust noise is actually governed by the type approval of the vehicle when it's first registered in the UK or when it's first put forward as a new vehicle to enter the UK market. Type approval is a process that we do here in the UK and they do in Europe as well, to make sure that the vehicle is fit for the UK road or fit for European roads, and it does include exhaust volume. 82 decibels was the limit from 1978 up until 2016, and unfortunately it got quieter again to 74 decibels specified in 2016. So vehicles registered from 2016 onwards are subject to the quieter 74 decibel limit. Now, that's not an upper limit for exhaust modifications, and this is where it gets very, very grey, very, very muddy. If your car is too loud, and by that I mean it draws too much attention, that could get you a pull, and that could result in you being told that your vehicle's exhaust is defective or not working as intended. An exhaust silencer, for example, If it's not there on your car and your car was designed to have one, the car itself is defective and the exhaust system specifically needs replacing for one with a silencer. So straight pipes are illegal, that's the first thing. Catalytic converters, the same thing applies. You can fit a performance cat. The car still has a cat, it was designed to have a cat as long as it passes an emissions test at time of MOT, it's legal. If a car has a resonator, not classed as a silencer but a resonator, and these can look like long cylinder silencers, but they are classed as a resonator. If a car was fitted with one at type approval, it has to have one in the aftermarket exhaust that you choose to fit. It has to have a silencer in the aftermarket exhaust that you choose to fit, and it has to have a catalytic converter if the vehicle was built with one. Now, by the built with one, what I mean is, from September 1991, any vehicles built, new and registered from that date onwards had to have a catalytic converter to be registered lawfully here in the UK. Vehicles registered prior to that and built before that date weren't legally required to have a catalytic converter. But again, if that vehicle was type approved, having a catalytic converter, it should have one. It should have one at time of test. It will probably be subject to the test that requires catalytic converters, stricter emissions regulations, for example. It gets even worse when you look at aftermarket exhaust. It's not illegal to modify the exhaust. It's technically legal to make an exhaust louder, but the design of the exhaust itself can have a cat, a resonator and a silencer, but if none of them work very well towards dampening the sound of the vehicle, then you could still find yourself drawing that unnecessary attention and then find yourself in a bit of crap. Now, I'm aware of a particular case that was brought forward a long time ago on a Subaru Impreza owner. Surprise, surprise. But that Subaru Impreza owner had a ProDrive exhaust system on the car, a well-known brand. They were helping Subaru at one point with their rally conquests, and are a very renowned Subaru tuner. It's a reputable brand, and it's a UK brand as well. Now, this case went to court as far as I'm aware. Now, this is just hearsay on a forum, but it went to court as far as I'm aware, and there was no legal limitations set for a vehicle with a aftermarket exhaust, or in this case a Subaru Impreza with a ProDrive exhaust. Now, that is what threw it out, because there was no actual test of a vehicle with a said exhaust. And as far as I'm aware, the vehicle was subject to an IVA, which is an individual vehicle approval. So what that is basically, kit car guys will know this probably better than anybody else, but what that is a test of a vehicle post modification or post build, if it is a kit car, where they would test the vehicle and make sure it's roadworthy and subject to, you know, the correct standards, if you like, that we would expect here in the UK to be roadworthy. It's a type approval for an individual vehicle or for a small batch of vehicles, if you like. So I do believe that the Subaru Impreza in question was a ProDrive model, a ProDrive marked vehicle, and those vehicles were louder. The exhaust systems were designed to have a better flow rate. As a consequence, they were a lot louder, but they weren't crazily loud. And this case was thrown out on the basis that this vehicle, once modified, is not subject to its original type approval decibel limit of 82 decibels for that specific vehicle at the time. And there's no upper limit on a modified vehicle with a modified exhaust. But if you were to be pulled over with an exhaust, and it's, let's say for argument's sake that it is a reputable brand, that exhaust could still be put into question come, you know, some sort of scrutiny, if you like, at a cop shop. They could be looking at it and saying it's not fit for its intended purpose, that silencer specifically. So it's a very grey area. There's no set decibel limit as an upper limit even for a modified car, but then there's no guidelines, there's just no regulation around exhaust volume. So usually if your car is well too loud, that's normally a point at which you want to stop and think, do you know what, I need to make this car a bit quieter, just so that you don't draw that unnecessary attention. Catalytic converters though, they do have to be, you know, working as intended, bringing the emissions down, subject to an MOT test every year to make sure that they are working effectively, or at least at the time of test, which is every year here in the UK, and therefore they are subject to a set test with actual physical guidelines and limitations as to how efficient or inefficient that they can be in correcting the emissions out of the back of the vehicle. So it's a very grey area around exhaust noise limits. There is no legislation giving you a peak volume. Anyway, moving on. The next one I want to cover is LEDs. Now, LED lights they are subject again to a test at an MOT test station. The light pattern that the headlight emits is designed in most cases where we're fitting LED bulbs for a halogen bulb. Now, a lot of good LED lights will mimic that light pattern perfectly. It'll go to a test station, it'll have a brighter, whiter light, that's all it will have. The pattern will be exactly the same and it'll look perfectly fine as far as testing goes. And that should make the bulbs legal. They are working as intended in this set light pattern for that particular vehicle, and that's what they're looking for at MOT. Just because you've switched them to LEDs, there's no laws yet saying that LED lights are illegal in any set vehicles, but replacement bulbs, if they are acting as intended and have the exact same light pattern, then they are working in accordance with what that vehicle was designed for, how them headlights were designed, and as intended. So that's the crux of it for an LED light. There are some instances though where you can put the bulbs in the wrong way around, especially with dual filament lights, where you can get the bulb patterns mixed up, so your low beam becomes high beam becomes low beam, in which case they will be illegal when you put your headlights on because the bulb pattern will be wrong. And the final one then, camber, suspension, lows, all that sort of stuff. There's no laws around camber and how much camber you can have. There's no laws around suspension height and how low your car can be or how high your car can be, but there are a lot of laws around tyres protruding from the vehicle body and wheels protruding from the vehicle body, and the wheel arches should be covering the wheels and tyres themselves. Another concern though, not necessarily a UK law for vehicle modification, but a concern is that it could make your insurance invalid if the suspension and how you've set the car up could have led to the accident or could have been a root cause of the accident or has inadvertently affected the handling of that particular vehicle, be it stopping distance, be it cornering ability and lateral g-force that vehicle is able to provide to avoid an accident, anything along those lines. If it's reduced traction or could be seen to have adversely affected the handling of the vehicle, that's where it gets very, very sticky, and it's not always the best. It's something where if you are found to be at fault because of how you've modified the car, your insurance is invalid. Any damage or anything like that you've caused with your vehicle because of the accident that's unfortunately happened to you, you could then be held liable for it. So that's a very bad one in my books. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a stance boy. I also like to actually drive cars, shots fired, but it's just not something that appeals to me because I do like the experience of driving down a B road in a spirited fashion and knowing that I have grip. But yeah, that's the main crux, if you like, around suspension geometry and setups and trying to manipulate your vehicle to not have the correct contact patch tyre to the floor as what was originally designed and intended for on that vehicle. And things like that, if you are really cambering out your wheels, you haven't got much of a contact patch for that tiny bit of a corner of a tyre touching the floor to stop you in emergency stops, to get you around a corner or to avoid something that's oncoming, whatever it may be. It's not something that the vehicle was intended for and designed for the suspension to work in that way. And two, if it goes wrong, it's probably you that's going to be held responsible for it. Those are everything. That's everything that I wanted to go through. Those are all the main ones I feel that could impact you as an individual modifying your car and could have a negative impact on you and your experience being a car enthusiast if you were to modify your vehicle incorrectly. According to UK law, obviously, each their own. Everyone's got different tastes. Stance, in my opinion, it's not something that I'd want to do, but I appreciate the art form of it. It is an art, stancing a car properly and getting correct fitment and stuff like that, and when they are stood still, they look brilliant, but maybe they are meant to be trailer queens. So anyway, that wraps this one up. If you got anything out of it, then please consider sharing this video to other people that might be able to contribute below in the comments to additional things in this list or correct me on some things that I've got wrong. I believe it's all accurate and correct from information that I found myself and double checked, triple checked. There is a lot of information on direct.gov as well. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.